So, Richard Sherman, you played for the 49ers. Your opinion of Steve Young's opinion?
I don't disagree with what Steve said because nothing he said was that outrageous or outlandish. I mean, it was a down year. It was a great opportunity for the San Francisco 49ers for a number of reasons. They had great health going into the playoffs. They survived. You know, sometimes that's the best thing you can have in the NFL is availability. They had their best players, for the most part, available. They had a young quarterback that was upright and healthy. They didn't have that the year before. He's right in that Green Bay was struggling throughout the rest of the season, but they came on really hot at the end. And so they were dealing with a really hot Green Bay team. I'm sure that team will look different this year, as he said. Detroit, again, a team that was playing with a lot of confidence, running the ball well, ran the ball well against the San Francisco 49ers. So that's true. And then even Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, they were having an off year. They did not have an off playoffs. They played really well in the playoffs. And to his credit, every time you make the Super Bowl, it's a great opportunity to take advantage and to do what you got to do and to win and take home the trophy, but they didn't. They still have a really talented roster. I think they still have one of the best rosters in NFL, and I think they'll have another shot this year. And I think they'll have that because they have a young quarterback on a rookie contract who was in his second year, and I don't think people give enough credit to Brock Purdy and what they were able to do with a guy in his second year starting, his first full season, going through another playoffs, playing really well, really consistent football, and they got to find a way to get it done. So I don't have any problem with what Steve Young said. They should have found a way to get it done. They were right there. They were in overtime, a play away. You're always a play away. An offensive lineman blowing an assignment, or you know, a punt return that gets muffed. You know, it's the play here, play there that changes the course of a Super Bowl.
So, Richard, the 49ers are still favored to win it all this coming season over the Chiefs, over the Ravens.
Again, experience comes into play. At the positions that matter, they have a quarterback who's a proven winner in the playoffs. And we put so much, when we talk about certain quarterbacks, we put so much weight on that. You know, when we talk about other quarterbacks, we put no weight on it. You know, when they talk about this kid, they don't give him any credit for the wins. They point to other places. They point to Shanahan. They point to McCaffrey. They point to Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams, this talented defense. And they should, because all these things are factors. But he's still going out there and winning ball games. There are other teams with great defenses. There are other teams with great playmakers on offense. Every team that makes it to the end of the road to the playoffs has these things. You have great players. That's why you're in these positions. So I think quarterback play will be a big reason. I think another year in the system for all these guys. I think Christian McCaffrey, again, you got to pray for health because the NFL is a 100% injury game. So that's the part of it that I think Steve Young is alluding to as well, is that, hey, you had injury luck this year. You had everything in front of you. You had guys healthy. Usually around that time, Trent Williams was banged up, or Deebo Samuel was banged up, or Christian McCaffrey could be banged up. Or are you dealing with, on the defensive side, you got guys banged up. But this year you had health. You got to find a way to win it.
You know, Steve is 100% right. There's no question about it. When you look at the way things were set up perfectly, almost not just the San Francisco 49ers, but anybody that was coming out of the NFC, it was set up perfect. Because when you go down that list of NFC teams, right, and you start to think about the ones that made deep playoff runs, the Green Bays, no one was expecting Green Bay to beat Dallas. They were the last seed. They go in the number 2 seed house in up 27-0 at half. No one expected that. No one expected Detroit to, I say, give San Francisco that game. That's what I think. I think Dan Campbell gave San Francisco the game. No one was expecting that. He was expecting for San Francisco to kind of just cakewalk and roll over them. And then when you talk about the division, the Rams were down, banged up. No one expected the Rams to play as well as they did throughout the course of the season, given the fact that they had a skeleton roster of players, whether it was Cooper Kupp being in and out of the lineup, Puka being a rookie and people not really understanding exactly what he was all about. Is Matthew Stafford going to stay healthy? No one expected Seattle to play as poorly as they did down the stretch. So when you start to just look at the conference and some of these divisions, it was a perfect opportunity for them to seize that moment. They got to the Super Bowl. Whatever happened, whether it was the offensive lineman going the wrong way and not hearing the right call, whether it was a muff punt that they wind up not being able to recover and get back to put them in position to score points. Whatever that was, they wind up losing the Super Bowl. Now when you look at this year, every single team in that conference that you look at got better. I ain't even talking about the division, I'm talking about the conference. The Green Bay Packers get better just off of the experience that they had from a year ago. So does Detroit. They get better off that experience. Now when you talk about that division and you look at Chicago, you don't think Chicago as a football team just got better? Yeah. They got way better. Philadelphia, better.
Way better.
Way better.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you start to look at it, do I still believe that San Francisco is at the top of the conference? Yeah, they are, because like Richard said, they got a quarterback that has 3 years of starting quarterback experience underneath his belt now. He doesn't have to look over his shoulder. If I make a mistake, they're going to pull me. That's over with. The thing that scares me the most is, how do they handle the IU contract situation? How do they handle that? Do they in the summertime, do all of a sudden he not show up at training camp, Skip and Richard? And now they got some stuff going on with the offense and it disrupts what they want to do on the offensive side? Or do they trade Deebo Samuel and keep Ayuk, or do they pay Ayuk and they still have Deebo? That's the one thing to me, out of everything in San Francisco, that I'm going to be paying close attention to, is what they do with Brandon Ayuk in that contract. Because if I'm him, I ain't stepping nowhere near Santa Clara. Till my deal is done, I'm signed, sealed, and delivered. That's the only thing I say can get in the way of Frisco getting back to the Super Bowl.
You agree, Richard?
Yeah, I think it's going to get resolved in the next couple of weeks. And not that I have any, insider information or anything, but I think they'll get it done before training camp. But I agree. I think that's a factor, and I also think the window is closing because of that. You got a lot of highly paid guys. That's why you're having conversations about Deebo Samuel leaving. That's why Eric Armstead, you couldn't afford to keep him. You couldn't afford to pay the $18 million cap hit. And that's why he's playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars now. He was a pivotal, foundational piece of this team for a long time. He's been there his entire career. So this will be the first year they don't have him in the middle. They don't have him anchoring that defense. So there'll be some adjustment there. I think there are so many things that are going to factor into this team. A new defensive coordinator. We don't talk about it very much, but Nick is going to do a great job, but it's going to be a little bit of a change. It's going to be a fundamental change. We talked about that all season last year, about in the booth, out of the booth. Is he going to be on the sideline? That was a huge factor. And I think Kyle wanted to go back to the fundamentals of what this team does and how this team has played for years. The system that's been in place, the system that was in place with Robert Saleh, the system that was in place with DeMeco Ryan. And I think he wanted to get back to that. They went away from that a little bit last year. So there's going to be a little bit of change, but I think it's going to be change for the better defensively. But again, as he said, that receiver situation is something to watch.
It is. So the painful irony to me about what Steve Young said also applied to my Dallas Cowboys, because I go into the playoffs thinking, what an easy path we have at least to get back to San Francisco for an NFC Championship game that we haven't been to for 29 years, right? We got Green Bay, the youngest team in the playoffs. Then we get Detroit. We already beat them once by hook or crook, but we beat them at home. We got this. We're set up. We got easy breezy. We're cakewalking to San Francisco. And that happened, of course. And then back to Steve Young's point, Richard, as you know, two things are hard. It's really hard to get to a Super Bowl, and it's really hard to win a Super Bowl. And yet, when I boil down what happened in the Super Bowl, it was a 2 or 3 play game. The punt disaster is a whole nother thing. But at the end of the game, you got one late play in regulation and one play in overtime, in which there are blown assignments, there's blown this, there's blown that, and you just don't make one third down play and another third down play. And that's why Patrick Mahomes gets the ball, and he does what he does better than anybody else left playing quarterback in the NFL, which is take it home when you have to take it home. But that's how close you got. But Richard, as you know, the history of Super Bowl losers is not a pretty sight, because once you barely lose, it's hard to pick yourself back up the next year and say, now we got to climb all the way back up there. So that's why I'm a little surprised that the 49ers are favored, because it's not like they got way better in the offseason. They sort of stayed the same, but to your point, your quarterback's just going to be better because he's older and wiser, and now he's established.
And think about it though, Skip. They were better than the other teams in the conference.
Yeah, they were.
So they were really like games that they won. They beat the you know what out of people.
Yeah.
They physically dominated teams and made them just
They
shut it down.
Except when Lamar went there on, was it Christmas night?
Yeah,
and when Joe Burrow went there, those happened at San Francisco, but those are the best quarterbacks, or two of the best quarterbacks in the other conference.
As I look at their schedule, Richard, the thing that bothers me, not bothers me, but would make me kind of shaky is the second half after the bye. They play 6 playoff teams of the 9 games, and 4 of those playoff teams are on the road. They got to go to Miami's, they got to go to Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Buffalo, in back-to-back weeks. Then they go to Miami. But they also play Detroit at home. So when you look at that back half of them 9 games, that's 6 teams that went to the playoffs. That's
Right.
and 4 of them on the road.